Now, have you ever felt lost in your life? Well, I have a good many times. And it's the times when you feel lost and you don't seem to have a sense of direction when you need a North Star in your life. And I don't know if you have a North Star and what you do when you get lost, but I found that in my life, the guidance of a North Star has been really great in getting me back on track. Now, a North Star has to be a fairly simple thing. A star is only one singular light in the distance. That's all it takes, one single thing. I don't know what your North Star could be, but my North Star has always been... Wait, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger stole my North Star. What is the North Star? Well, Arnie wrote a book, and that's my North Star. And it's fairly simple. You just got to be useful. And if you get useful, then everything else falls into place. Now, I gave myself the name Jack, and in doing so, I think I picked up the definition of what Jack is. And Jack is a jack of all trades. And I always thought that I was the jack of all trades and master of none. Until just recently, I realized that jack of all trades and master of none is only part of the story. Because the full saying is, it's jack of all trades, master of none, though often better than the master of just one. So what's that got to do with roof repairs, roofing, and the sort of work we do? Well, I've got a story here of a handyman job. And a handyman is a jack of all trades. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a handyman, being a jack of all trades. You're not a master of one, so you're not a real expert at anything. But you're capable enough in a whole range of things to be really useful. And the key words in here is being useful. You can be a really useful handyman, or you could be a useless handyman. And I've got a story here about a really useless handyman. So here's the story. Okay, so now we're talking about handyman services. And like every other service available, you have some really good handyman and some handyman that's not quite so handy. They may be handy in taking your money, but not too handy in actually doing the right thing. Now, just yesterday, I got a call from a client who used our services about 20 years ago. And she said, I need help. So naturally I said, what, have you got another leaking roof? She said, no, none of that stuff. I got cats in my attic. So I said to her, listen, I may be handy and been called Jack and maybe jack of all trades, but what's cats in your attic got to do with my specialty in fixing roof leaks? And she said, well, that's what the problem is. I didn't think about calling you to get this little job done because it's such a little job and it's nothing to do with a leaking roof. So naturally I said, what happened? Well, it's a long story, she said. I've got a section of my eaves that has fallen down, which has left a hole. And somehow a cat's gone in and gone into my attic, and it's had kittens. And you can imagine the ruckus that a mother cat and kittens can make in an attic. So I asked, then what happened? Well, she said, I managed to get the kittens taken out, but the cat is still in there. And I said, so? Well, she said, I got a handyman to come in and he did a few other things for me. And he said that he could fix the section of fallen eaves. And then she said, well, I don't think he's done a good job. And I went, why? Well, the cat's still in there. I heard it last night. Okay, I said, I'll come over and have a bit of a look at it and see what I can do. since you are one of my original clients. So guess what I found when I had a look? Now you can see that there's a section of eaves that has fallen out from behind the gutter. Now apparently this was the new section that the handyman had put in, and if he had done it properly, it would have stayed in and filled in the gap, and the cat wouldn't have been able to get into the attic. So somehow when you have a look at this picture, you see that the eaves has actually fallen out. And when I took the tiles out and had a good look, the handyman had used a bit of electrical wire to try to hold the eaves lining up, and obviously it's not something that is going to work. So the lining had fallen down, and virtually everything that the handyman had done was useless. Now, fixing eaves is not exactly in our line of work because we fix roof leaks. But being a little bit of a jack of all trades myself, I said to the client, I'll get you out of your problem and I'll get the eaves put in properly so that the cat doesn't get in. So I managed to put in support angles and put the eaves lining back in, and also put a little extension in there where the handyman had actually missed. And finally we got that section of the eaves repaired, and it was no longer an entry point for the mother cat. And so when I told the client what I found, she said, I can't believe it, because Mr. Handyman told me that the eaves was fixed for good and there's no way that any cat could get in. Now, I don't know what the handyman was thinking by attempting to do something that was totally out of his level of expertise and then claim that the job had been done properly. So this is the standard of work that you'll expect when you get a handyman who is not so handy. And there's lots of those handymen around, going around doing work that is not quite handy. However, fixing eaves is not in our area of expertise, but we actually know a lot more outside our level of expertise that lets us do things that are effective and way better than any other handyman. So the client says to me, how much should I pay you? And I said, well, surely I'm worth twice as much as the handyman, because what he did didn't work. What I did is an absolute solution. So she said, well, the handyman asked me for $300 for the job. Simple, I said, well, twice as that is $600. And she said, okay, I'll have to pay you $600. That's fair, I said, but you should pay me $300 out of your own pocket and go back to the handyman and get the other $300 and then pay me the other part of the money and I'll get $600, and you're only out of pocket by $300. And she kind of looked at me and she said, good luck on that happening. So what's the lesson in this story? Well, obviously, from a homeowner perspective, you got to choose the right handy person. And if it's a complicated job, you shouldn't even consider a handy person. You should be considering a specialist. If it's a roof, you get a roof specialist. If it's pipes, you get a plumbing specialist. If it's electrical, you get an electrician, and so on and so forth. And handymen are only good for really simple jobs. But there are exceptions, right? Now, there's a handyman here in Australia, he's in Perth, who puts up quite a lot of content about how to fix things. And he's really, really good. And actually his channel is all about him doing the work and showing a typical homeowner how they could do it themselves. And Dennis knows a lot about roof repairs, roof and guttering. Now, I don't agree with him entirely on everything that he does, but obviously he's just a handyman. In this job, for instance, and to me, there's one glaring problem on what he's trying to fix. Now, we know that when you get a leak, there are multiple sources of the leak. So he's seen the obvious and he's there now doing the obvious repair. But I can see straight away that there is another hidden source of the leak that he doesn't know about. It's because he's not a specialist roofer. And I can almost guarantee that once he's left his job and they get a really heavy rain, the owner will say, it's not leaking as bad anymore, but there's still a tiny leak. So the moral of the story is you don't have to be the best, but you got to be fairly competent in what you do and use that level of competence to be really useful, either to yourself or to other people. And I know my limitations on different things. A lot of areas I'm quite competent in, but I know that I'm not the expert. So therefore, if I want complicated things done, I call an expert. I rely on an expert. So if you as a homeowner want your roof done properly, then you call in the experts, not just any handyman.